austerity, against budget cuts. And this is a tendency we see from Greece to Iceland to 100 campuses across the United States. This week, we're recording the show here on Friday, March 12th. There's a general strike going on in Italy today against budget cuts, against austerity, against what the bankers dictate. IMF shock therapy would be another word for it. Similarly, in Greece, yesterday there was a general strike. So Greece and Italy have general strikes. And the U.S., in our pathetic fragmentation and impotence in the face of the ruling elite, we can't do anything. We don't make it when it comes to fighting for our own economic survival, except that we do have the students coming out on 100 campuses in 33 states saying no to tuition increases. The first step towards rationality and reality is don't make me pay for the depression, make the bankers pay. Now, the students have got to master the second part of that, but at least saying don't make me pay is a beginning. And, of course, in Iceland, we now have the report, maybe we can get a report later in the show, 92% plus voted against the bankers. The vote in favor of paying the so-called debt, paying the extortion and blackmail is what it was, the pure thievery to London and The Hague, to the British and the Dutch, the Anglo-Dutch, was 1.5% to 2% were in favor of paying. But 92 to 93% said, no, we're not paying. The rest of the ballots were invalid or blank. So that's the tendency of reality. Now, of course, the odd man out is the U.S. Tea Party movement, which says, please come and flay us alive. Please strip us of our economic rights. We're concerned about the deficit. We're concerned about future debt. That's all well and good, but in the immediate, as we will see, that translates into a brutal austerity program causing deaths in the here and now, and there's no doubt about it. It has genocidal overtones just as bad as anything that Obama is proposing. And, of course, there's a bipartisan consensus. Republicans and Democrats are uniting to defend Wall Street. And if you don't like that, you better have your own independent organization with no Republican politicians of any kind and no Democratic Party politicians of any kind either. You've got to somehow separate yourself from these two parties, and I guess that's a growing understanding. So Greece, as we know, this is the attack of Goldman Sachs and Soros on the Greek government bonds as a means of attacking the euro. The purpose of that, of course, is to make money in the short run, but also the broader political purpose is to mask the crisis of the U.S. dollar by making the euro collapse faster than the dollar. It's an act of economic warfare. It's an organized bear raid. And, of course, instead of destroying the health, education, and welfare safety net of the Greek population, the government there ought to be striking back against the hedge funds, ban derivatives, or at least ban certain kinds of derivatives. There is a move, and we'll talk about it in a minute, an international move to ban credit default swaps, something we've been calling for here. Banning derivatives or taxing them out of existence, whichever is easier, but certain kinds have to be banned, and credit default swaps are the ones. So that's what we need for Greece, not making the people pay for the crisis, but taking it back to the bankers who caused the crisis. And if you don't have that programmatic element of how you make the bankers pay with a Tobin tax, a Wall Street sales tax, a securities transfer tax, a trading tax, call it what you will, but the Wall Street sales tax or Tobin tax is the indispensable central part of this, plus other reforms, of course. Ban credit default swaps, ban adjustable rate mortgages. That's what we need for Greece. Iceland shows the way, but now, of course, the Prime Minister of Iceland, Jóhanna Sigurðardóttir, says, well, that was one deal that the people rejected by 92% to 2%, but we're going to find a way to pay nonetheless. So the absolute contempt for democracy, for the popular will, expressed by these Eurogawks, because that's what she is. This Jóhanna Sigurðardóttir is a Eurogawk, a dyed-in-the-wool Eurogawk, oriented towards the Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, New Labour Party. they have absolute contempt for the popular will, for any kind of democratic expression. They as we were told by Thoreau and Arneson last week, this regime of social democrats in Iceland boycotted the election. They refused to go and vote. They said it was meaningless. So what you think is meaningless. And again, if you don't like that, don't hitch your wagon to any Democrats, but don't hitch your wagon to any Republicans either, like you Tea Party chumps out there. When you come to Washington, they take you over to Capitol Hill to listen to a bunch of House Republican reactionaries popping off about how they got religion now and they're off the booze and they're in favor of fiscal responsibility. Well, those are the guys who passed the monstrous Bush tax cuts for the rich, $1.3 trillion in deficit spending, plus the Iraq war, plus the Afghanistan war, all coming as deficit spending, plus other measures that Bush put in. And then the students. Students, you got to understand, it's good to go out and assert your rights, and that's essentially very basic. But we can't spend too much time celebrating that because there's going to be a counterattack, and the counterattack is quite obvious. The Wall Street Journal editorial page, Wednesday, March 10th. California's college dreamers. When will students figure out that the politicians have sold them out? Get it? The usual ruling class finance oligarch line. The politicians are your enemies, not Wall Street, not Goldman Sachs, not J.P. Morgan Chase, not Morgan Stanley, not the Bank of America, not the people who are actually controlling the government and giving orders to Geithner and Obama. No, it's the politicians. And, of course, the line from the Wall Street Journal is that these are spoiled brats. These are little gluttons of privilege. They're so privileged already. They're out there demanding more privileges. They should bite the bullet and suffer like the rest of us. Well, of course, the only way to avoid that, dear students, is to give your struggle a broader social meaning and to put forward as program points of your own reforms that will meet the needs of the entire society. So you can identify your struggle with the public good and the commonweal precisely in the way that the Wall Street Journal does. They say, well, of course, the financiers are essential to the system, so when we bail out Wall Street, we're really bailing out Main Street, except, of course, we're not. Dear students, the only way out of this is to say Tobin tax, securities transfer tax, trading tax, make Wall Street pay, hit Goldman Sachs in the labanza where it hurts, 1% coming out of all your trades. You want to do flash trading 1,000 times a second? Wonderful, boys. 1% in the public treasury. So by the time you've done it 100 times, not much left. And that indeed will put a wet blanket over speculation and replenish the public treasury and begin the shift of the United States away from this hyper-financialized casino economy of globalization where everything is betting and wagers and risk back to the solid area of investment in modern plant and equipment, modern technology, modern capital goods, large-scale infrastructure, science drivers, and therefore real economic growth, not speculative growth. And you can see the freak out of the Washington Post. They're also freaked out about Athens and the, quote, speculators, as if they're not speculators. Well, they are. We'll be back in a minute on World Crisis Radio.